Great. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you at this webinar, which will help you shine whenever the media calls. So we have our expert, Lauren Vogel. We have our sponsor, Jack Crowdis from Pay Forwards. So the way the session is going to run is Jack will welcome us. Then we'll introduce Lauren. She's going to give her presentation. Then I'm going to pop back in with information about a program that's coming up, and then we'll go to live Q&A. So with that, Jack, I'd like to introduce you, Jack Crowdis from Pay Forwards.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Thanks for having us. Aviatra is something we're really excited to be a part of in 2024 and hopefully beyond. Okay, so Pay Forwards. So up front, we're just payroll and HR technology. So the software you use to run payroll and manage different HR related items. But I think it's what's behind the software that separates us from our competitors, like our tax team. 15 years of experience, stays on top of tax and labor laws to make sure that you guys stay compliant and just that your taxes get paid and reported on in a timely manner. There's our operations team who works with you every step of the way through implementation and onboarding. This one specifically for me stands out to startups, like getting tax accounts set up or just understanding general compliance in relation to W-2 employees and beyond will help you with that. And then our service team, which I think is a true differentiator. The dedicated team of account analysts who take the time to understand your business and how it operates. You know, whenever you have a question, anytime you need help, call your analyst and they pick up. So yeah, I mean, that's just kind of a small peek into who we are. If you guys ever have any questions about HR, payroll, anything tax related, shoot us an email, give us a call. You know, we'll get you sorted out. You know, we're here to help and we're eager to do so. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so appreciative of your support of Aviatra and all of the startups that we work with. So I'm going to put the link to your website in the chat, and everybody can reach out to you. And also in February, Pay Forwards is going to be our topic of the month, which will be kind of like thinking through your first hire. Should it be a contractor? Should it be a W-2? Like what are the ramifications of each of those choices? So we'll see you guys again for sure in February. So let's switch over to Lauren. So Lauren and I have known each other for a number of years. She works for Scooter Media, which is a PR firm, and so grateful to have Lauren come in and teach this workshop because she really is an expert on how to get the media gigs or how to get their attention, but then what to do when you have the attention, right? Like you do not want to screw it up. This is a golden moment. Let's make the most of it. So Lauren, thanks for joining us, and I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Jill. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, so I'll make sure everybody can see this. Can you see my PowerPoint presentation, everybody? Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and put this into presentation mode. All right. Are you still able to see that, or is it on the presenter?
We can see it, but we can also see your next slide.
Hang tight. Let me switch it. Is this better?
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. So as Jill mentioned, I work for Scooter Media. We're a boutique agency over in Covington, but we serve clients on both sides of the river. In terms of my background, I've been in a PR role for well over a decade. I've worked in the B2B side of things, so business to business communications, but also in the B2C side, so business to consumer. So I have quite a bit of experience in the different types of kind of conversations and approaches to media relations activity. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on in here and get started, if my computer will let me. Stop sharing for a second. Sorry, it's given me the spinning wheel of death. So
I had this problem last time. I can't. I wish I had a suggestion for you. I have no idea what to do about it.
Probably closing out of the number of things that I have open would be helpful. So, all All right, let's try this again.
Great, thanks.
All right. Can we see the slide?
Not quite yet, but we're getting there, I'm sure.
It says we're viewing your screen. Ah,
There we go.
All right. So today we'll quickly talk about what is public relations. We'll talk about understanding the media and the different types of needs that they have based on the type of media they are. We'll also talk about how to determine your messaging before you have these opportunities, so you're ready to prepare for them when you're able to land them. We'll review how to build a media suite, and then we'll also talk about what happens after you've landed the interview. So public relations is a strategic communication process. It helps to build mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. To many, that could be just their consumers, it could be their shareholders, their consumers, it could be their shareholders, consumers, the media, their community. So there's a lot of different audiences that you can reach through communications tactics, and public relations plays a big role in that. And then, of course, it's also the professional maintenance or favorable public image of a company, organization, or an individual. So news coverage really impacts everything for organizations, from their advertising campaigns to company credibility, to increasing awareness and visibility among your target audiences, brand image, website traffic. If you're able to franchise or you're looking to, it can certainly help with franchise development, investors, all kinds of things. So it is really important to utilize these opportunities as much as you can when you get them. There are some pretty clear differences between PR and advertising. Advertising are paid opportunities. They are usually pretty expensive, whereas PR is really just around fostering relationships. You sometimes would pay a person in-house or an agency, so that's really the only cost associated, but there's no actual cost for the segment or the story itself. It's definitely has a little more longevity than an ad. So an ad will pop up and it will disappear after the contract period. Your story that you land on a City Beat or a WLWT website will last until that link dies. So it's usually there forever. And then, of course, PR can really help you cast a wider net. You can do regional outreach to different stations and outlets, depending on where your audiences are. Whereas, again, with advertising, you really are in a specific market. You're paying a specific price for that. And then it also has greater credibility with the public. So I'm sure all of us have seen ads on our Instagram feeds. We've received ads when we're looking at articles on reputable publications, and we can pretty much tell when they're paid and when they're organically placed. So let's talk about understanding the media. There are many different types, and we'll go ahead and jump into kind of the different needs for each one. So for print, you're usually dealing with beat reporters. So they will specifically be focused on a topic or industry. So the Business Courier is like this. The Cincinnati Enquirer is like this. And so you really have to make sure that you're doing your research before you're identifying who you want to reach out to. I have a lot of clients who are like, well, I have a really great friend at the Enquirer, but they cover healthcare and I'm a restaurant. So I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about how we can get you to Keith Pandolfi, because he's really going to be the person that you're going to want to get to if you want him to come out and try your food. So it is important to make sure that you do that research. You also will probably be asked for background materials in advance. We provide that to our contacts when we have secured opportunities for clients. If you have any fact sheets, bios, general information about your business or services or products, make sure that you're pulling all that together and sharing that in advance. Or afterwards, depending on when they need that from you. And then, of course, print interviews are typically done by phone. Sometimes they're done in person. It just really depends on if there's more of a visual aspect that they need to be on site for. We do this a lot with the Courier when we work with a commercial developer that we work with, because there's just a lot of visuals that go into play there. So, but they are typically done by phone, which allows you to be close to your computer so you can have your notes handy, which is always helpful. So make sure that you do kind of have your notes handy for those opportunities. And then, of course, nothing is just in the print format anymore. A lot of the print publications are heavily digital or have digital presence. So make sure that you kind of think about ways to support that coverage once it's live. We are big fans of sharing it on our clients' social media handles when they do get placements, because At the end of the day, reporters want to see that you're supporting them and that you're sharing that story that they've worked really hard on. And then there are different types of print publications. So there are dailies like the Inquirer, there are weeklies like the Business Courier, and then there are monthlies, which are trade publications and magazines. And with monthlies, there's a little more strategy that goes into play. Oftentimes you have to take a look at their editorial calendars at the beginning of the year. And you'll have to pitch them about 3 months out if there's a specific issue that you want to get into. Their lead times are very, very long. So there is a little more some upfront research that's required if you want to get into some of those long form or long-term lead publications. For digital, a lot of these reporters are generalists, they're freelancers, or they work with an organization and they don't have a beat that they cover. They're kind of a catch-all. Many of them, if you send them a really well-written news release, will run it as is, or they'll ask just for a couple fact checks or things like that. They often won't tell you that their story is running, so make sure that you keep a keen eye out for that coverage, or you check in with them to ask when it might go live. Do not send them PDFs. We once talked with a writer at Cosmo when we had a client that was in the lifestyle sector, and she said that her inbox daily is almost at 200. So as you can imagine, they get jammed up pretty quickly. Those attachments will usually cause you to bounce to spam. So make sure that you're not attaching anything unless you've already had contact with them and they're asking for that specifically. We like to use Google links to upload any photos, images, B-roll, video, anything like that, so that they can download it on their own accord. And then, of course, to that point, outlets are always looking for content. Again, they're not just responsible for writing the article and sharing some photos. They're also usually typically responsible for helping to gather content for social media for their publication. So if you do have video or infographics or anything else that will help you tell your story, make sure you also pull those together. And then content's published continuously. It's a 24-hour news cycle, so you never know when those stories are going to run. So keep an eye out, and then you can always ask the reporter if you've been working with them when they anticipate it going live. Oftentimes, these digital publications will have newsletters that are distributed either daily or weekly, so make sure that you're signed up for those so that you don't miss to see if your article is one of the top stories that they shared in that. And then, of course, again, they watch to see how you support and amplify their coverage. So make sure that if you are getting any sort of digital coverage with a publication, that you're sharing it to your business's handles. Television, so camera time is super limited. You usually don't get more than 3 minutes for a segment, and that's for pre-recorded and live. So you really have to make sure that you are prepared with your talking points and you have exactly what you want to cover ready to go in advance so that you can keep things very efficient. TV relies on what you can see, so make sure that you have tons of visuals. If you're going in studio, make sure if you're, a restaurant, that you have plated food, you have your jarred pasta or whatever you might have, you have merch on the table. You really want to make sure that there are good visuals involved. And of course, if you're doing like a cooking demo, make sure that you have each step of the process kind of laid out. And then if they're on site, you'll want to make sure that you look around and make sure that there are good visuals for them on site. So if you're at an event, you want to make sure there are people in the background. If you're doing like a telethon, you want to have people picking up those phones, right? So again, think about those visuals that you can offer up to them. In terms of attire for these, you definitely want to avoid hectic patterns and anything with like any jewelry that's short, like shiny or noisy. The microphones will pick that up. So kind of the more plain or a logoed polo, right, with your business's logo on it is great. We always recommend that our spokespeople have something logoed that they're wearing. Again, just be really mindful of the background and how busy it can get. So think about that when you're getting ready in the morning for your opportunity. Once that microphone is on, everything that you say is fair game. They can hear you in the control room. So even though you're not being recorded on the actual segment itself, the folks behind the cameras can hear everything that you're saying. So just be really mindful of that once the mic is on. When you do have a TV opportunity, look at the reporter like you're having a conversation. We talked about this in the last webinar. You don't want a Ricky Bobby moment where you're staring at the camera and you're like, I don't know where to put my hands. It'll look very awkward and it'll make you feel very uncomfortable if you're staring at a camera and you have somebody who's looking at you to try to have a conversation. So they'll cue you when it's time to like look at the camera and smile. They'll do it so that you can take the cue from them. But for the most part, you're just going to kind of sit and chit chat like you're having a conversation with them. And then finally, there are different types, again, of opportunities here in the television space. There are live in studio or on site opportunities, and then there are taped. So with a live shot, you can't really go, oh, you know what, can I say that again? You kind of have to just wing it and go with it. So if you fumble, just remember your talking points and get back to those. With a tape segment, you do have a little more wiggle room. You can kind of direct them a little bit like, oh, let me actually show you the new addition that we added to the back of our building. And you can kind of direct them a little bit to what you want them to see or to talk about. So we're usually on site with our clients to help direct, like, oh, why don't you show them the Kentucky Chew so they don't singe off their taste buds when they go to drink that bourbon? So we usually will talk them through so that they can really kind of control the segment a little bit more. So that's how you'll do that. And those are the difference between the two. And you'll always want to ask when you get the opportunity is this a live segment or is this going to be taped and recorded and played later? For radio, with the exception of talk, interviews, again, will be super brief. Usually they do them by phone. They just really want a sound bite to add to either their desk read or the full story that they're doing. It depends on the station or outlet that you're working with. A VXU sometimes will come out and do like a full tour of your facility, or we'll take a look at a project that you're working on and they'll do an interview and then kind of cut different pieces that they want from that. Most of the time you'll be either in studio with them if you're doing like a panel discussion. So VXU also has some lunchtime kind of panels that they pull together as well. But then for the most part, like a WLW, you'll be calling in just to give them a quick soundbite. So it'll be very, very quick. Again, it could be live on air, or it could also be taped and aired later. So make sure you ask beforehand. And then again, could be in studio or by phone. If it's by phone, if you have a landline, would recommend using that. If not, make sure that you're somewhere where you get really great reception. I also recommend to my clients that they wear AirPods or something that's close to their phone if their microphone maybe isn't as great on their phone, just to make sure the audio is a little better quality. Again, because if most of these are done, by phone, or if they're in the studio, there isn't a visual aspect to it. Some of the stations like iHeart will have some photos and video going on, like the DJs will do that to share content on social media, but for the most part, you can have notes handy and things like that to prompt you through your interview. And then remember that your voice is visual with radio. So you really have to lean on it to help tell the story. So speak very clearly, kind of be a little expressive with your voice, like I'm trying to do now as an example. And then of course, if possible, make sure that you kind of smile as if you were face to face with someone. I think it helps with the tone of voice. So those are just some pointers if you get a radio opportunity. If for some reason you reach out to media and they cannot come out to cover something, or you have something scheduled and they have to cancel, which does happen for breaking news. I've been bumped for presidential elections and breaking news with storms, so it does happen. If that's the case, make sure that you have backup materials to send over to them after the event or the grand opening happens, because there's still an opportunity to secure that coverage. So definitely make sure that you're putting together a press release with some details about the who, what, where, when, and why of what happened. Make sure you're getting photos. And then I always recommend getting B-roll. You'll want to shoot that horizontally for news. We obviously, with social media, you want to do it vertically because people are looking on their phones. But for news, you'll want to shoot it horizontally. And then you'll package all of that up and include that in what you send to them. Again, make sure that you include at least 1 to 2 quotes. 2 is ideal. 1 is the very least. With some anecdotes from the event and some of the important people that were in attendance, or if there was a launch, make sure again that the folks included in that launch of a product or service are quoted about why the product or service is going to be beneficial to audiences. And then of course, just make sure that you want to complete the package as much as possible. So for us, our goal is to always make reporters' jobs easier. They have a lot of deadlines that are very quick turnarounds. They wear a lot of different hats. So again, the easiest, that you can make it on them, the better. And they will be more likely to use your release if you have photos. We've actually been told by previous clients when we bring them on, like, oh, they never cover us. And we've asked, well, what kind of materials are you providing to them? And they're like, oh, just a press release. And I was like, that will be why. In most of the digital platforms, they have to have a photo to accompany the copy. So they won't run anything without at least 1 photo, but the more you can offer to them, the better. And they'll typically ask about photo credit. So if you are using a professional photographer, make sure you include that in kind of the title of your images. All right, so the media has pretty specific needs from spokespeople. They really are looking for accurate, useful, and timely information of interest to their audiences. They want reliable and well-prepared sources. And I cannot stress this enough. There have been times where folks do not prepare, and you can definitely tell, and our contacts have asked us maybe not to invite that particular person back. So you want to make sure that you are ready to go when you have these opportunities, because they really want to make sure that the segment goes well for you, but also for their viewers. Again, make sure you have good visuals, data, and sound bites available for them. You want to be responsive. My rule of thumb is, even if you don't have any details or you have to check on scheduling or other people that you might want to include on the segment, I always respond right away like, hey, got your note. I'm working on my end to pull together details. I'll share additional dates that work for us for an in-studio segment by end of day today. Again, you just want to be responsive and get to them as quickly as possible. And if you're waiting for feedback from other people, just let them know that you're working on it so that they don't think that you've ghosted them. And then, of course, they are looking for a pitch that is relevant to them. So do not pitch someone again that maybe is not the right beat writer for that. Or if you look at their previous coverage and you can see that they're really focused on transportation, again, a service that is for like health and wellness is probably not going to be a fit for them. And it's really, it does irritate contacts because, again, their inboxes are super crazy. So do your research, make sure you're reaching out to the right person in advance. So now you'll want to, I'm sure a lot of you are already doing this because you have to when you start a business. You're thinking about, okay, when I'm talking about my business, what's that one message that I want to make sure that I get? And then what are those supporting points that I want to make sure that I'm able to convey to my target audiences about why they need this product or service? So this model probably already exists somewhere in your business model, but to leverage it for media relations, you'll tweak it a little bit. So our friend Abby here with Tickety Boo is a former AVHRA member, and so we pulled this together for her when we were working with her on a project that we had when we did another opportunity like this. And so again, her products are very unique. And so we talked about like, what are those things that really help you stand out from your competitor? And one of those things is that Abby had celiac disease. So her food really needed to be healthy and attainable for folks who maybe have some different health needs. The other thing for her was that they have to be really good, right? Like they have to taste good and be available to folks who have, again, some of those additional health needs. So they're gluten-free, vegan, and paleo, but they're also easily accessible, right? You can order them online, you can get them from various retailers. So those were kind of her 3 pillars that we mapped out for her. So this is a good example of how that can shake out. And again, this will help direct your interview opportunities that you get when you have questions from reporters. So one other thing that you'll want to think about doing, and again, you're probably doing this from a sales standpoint, but you'll want to think about potentially doing this from a media standpoint. So media kits are a great way of pulling a lot of information about your business or organization into like very digestible content. So it's very similar to a sales toolkit, but it's directed towards your media contacts. So it shouldn't be ad heavy. It should be informative and should provide awareness about what you do, but it should not be selling anything. So that's going to be a little bit different than a sales toolkit. It could be digital or it could be print and produced and packaged. I'll show you some kind of options that we've done for clients in the past to give you some ideas. You'll want to include at least a 1-page fact sheet that has details on the company and the products and services that you offer. Again, a suite of content like photos and video is going to be super important for reporters. Make sure you have a logo that they can use. Also, if you have any behind the scenes video, that's great to share. Lifestyle photos, product photos, headshots for any executives or folks who are kind of providing services to your customers are also important. And then those bios for them as well, and for leadership and spokespeople are important to include in that. And finally, this probably goes without saying, but contact information is very important so they know where to drive traffic to and their audiences in case they want to learn more. So here's kind of what those would look like. We previously have worked with a wealth management group, Bartlett. We helped put together a media kit when we were doing outreach to national reporters in the finance space about their experts who could speak to various topics. And so this was a downloadable option for them. It had headshots of the spokespeople that we were offering up. and provided detailed information on their background, but also clearly mapped out the topics that they could speak to. So whether it was planning, succession planning for family businesses, or how to, give charitably to help reduce your taxes, or, charitable giving planning, things like that. So it really mapped out each of those so that when we did outreach, the reporter could take a look through that and make sure that they had the right contact, or they could request an interview with a specific person. Here's some more examples too. We worked with a company that did kind of green cleaners when we were doing outreach to lifestyle reporters who were based in like family and housekeeping and home and garden. Just some details again on the organization, what they stood for, what products they offer, and then the fragrances that they came in, things like that. And then we do work with Corporex, who is the master developer of Ovation that's taking place over here in Northern Kentucky in Newport. It's the giant, if you're seeing the cranes and if you've been to Megacorp Pavilion, that's them. Before there was any of that happening, it was just the music venue that was there. We had to figure out a really clever way to help our reporters envision what the development was going to look like. So all we had were renderings. So we turned them into 2D models through a viewfinder so that they could actually see and stand in place of the site what that would look like. So that QR code then led to digital assets that they could download, including those renderings. It had details on the project. Again, it was a more packaged piece. These can be very expensive, so be choiceful about when you do leverage these. But again, they can be a really good handout to take for reporters to take back with them. Graders does this. They'll send little package stuff if they are releasing a new product or a new ice cream to the Inquirer. There's a lot of folks who leverage this tactic to kind of get reporters' attention, and people moved away from it. But I think with the pandemic, it's coming back because it's a good way to, again, catch their attention. So now that you landed the interview, what do you do? So make sure that if a reporter reaches out to you or you reach out to them and they respond, that you're identifying their topic. And the biggest thing is to always ask what their deadline is. What you don't want is to be working on something in the background and then say, oh, you know what, you missed my deadline because you didn't know what the deadline was. So make sure that you ask for the deadline. Again, return their call or email in a timely manner so that they know you've got it and that you're working on it. If you have someone who is on your team who is running communications, or if you're working with a PR partner, make sure you inform them right away that you've been contacted by media so they're in the loop and can help you prep for that. And then again, in terms of preparing, make sure you have those 2 to 4 key points that you want to cover in your interview. Understand who the audience is that you're speaking to with the outlet. I always provide to my clients, we have opportunities, links to previous like articles or TV segments from the reporter so that they can get a sense of what it'll look like, but also who they're talking to. You'll review past coverage to help you prepare, and then practice. Make sure you're doing it in the mirror or with a friend or with someone who you trust. Do it with your dog or your cat. Just the more you can kind of run through your talking points, the more polished you'll sound when you get the opportunity. And then again, think about what visuals or props you're going to need to take with you or to set up when they come out on site. Again, you're going to want to think about the format. So be sure to either read, watch, or listen previous stories. This will really help you to kind of decide if it is a pre-taped segment, like the different parts of your organization you're going to want to take them through, and the story you're going to want to tell in each part of the organization. Thinking about the location again, whether you're going to be in studio or you're going to be on site, that'll help you prep for it. One thing to call out: cooking demos. You will have to bring oftentimes everything with you. So everything from all of the ingredients to a finished product to cooking utensils. Fox 19 has a full kitchen, which is super great and helpful for our clients that have cooking demos there. Local 12 has a hot plate. So you really do have to bring like all your pots and pans, make sure that you set up in advance. And again, you can ask the studios just what their setup is in advance so that they can kind of give you a little bit of guidance on that. In terms of attire, again, we kind of already talked about this, but branded polos. If you're getting your chef on, make sure that they're dressed like a chef. And again, avoid hectic patterns or loud jewelry. Be confident when you get in there. Remember that you know more than the anchors do or the reporter. Like, they're really not going to know if you flub something. Obviously, don't lie, but if you flub something, they're really not going to know because this is your topic that you own. Be clear and concise. Try to stay away from any industry jargon unless it's like an industry publication, like a trade publication. Make sure that you stay very focused. So again, repeat your key points. You'll always want to start strong with those, help build that story, and then end with those key points again when you have an opportunity to wrap up. And then be helpful, just offer any additional resources. If you have access to others who are in the space, who you partner with, a customer, a client, make sure that you offer them up if they're comfortable talking to media. And then of course, any background information or research that you have available. Some really high level do's and don'ts when you do have an interview opportunity. Make sure you're weaving in those key messages. Stop talking after the question has been asked, or you've answered the question. I can't tell you how many times a reporter will just sit there in silence because you want to know what happens. Our spokespeople want to fill the silence. That's just a natural human nature. So it can get you in trouble. It can definitely make you ramble a little bit and get off topic. So once you've said your talking point, just sit there a little bit. I know it'll feel uncomfortable, but that'll help, again, then prompt another question and it'll keep the interview moving. Make sure you share facts and anecdotes to demonstrate credibility. Again, be positive, sincere, always honest, do not lie. Correct any misinformation used by a reporter. So if they toss out a stat that you're unfamiliar with, you can say, I'm unfamiliar with that statistic, but what our study found was, and you can kind of share one that you know is true, that you have background information that you can leverage to back that up. And then know your facts and figures going in. Some big do's, some big don'ts. Express opinion without fact. That's not going to look very credible. Again, it's like a rumor mill getting started, so we don't recommend that. Don't answer incorrectly. It's okay to say, what, I actually don't know, but I can find out for you and come back to you with that. Or you can pivot to another talking point that's a little bit adjacent that you feel more comfortable with. Again, don't use technical industry jargon. Do not say no comment or offer information off the record. No comment makes it seem like you're not willing to answer the question in the first place. They might pry a little bit and say, interesting. If they're not comfortable answering this, I wonder why. So we don't recommend it. Again, you can pivot back to the things that you are comfortable with. If you would just want to say, you know what, I really can't speak to that, but what I can tell you is, and then you can go back to some of those points that are a little more, a bit of a comfort level for you. And then nothing is off the record with the reporter. At the end of the day, that is their job and they are really good at it. So they will sniff out a story. They usually will be doing things like checking any copyright filing, or if you're purchasing a building. So they do their research and that is their full-time job. So again, nothing is off the record with them. Then again, to that point, no matter how comfortable you are with them, don't discuss competitors or engage in gossip. Again, it doesn't look well. It can open the door for litigation or rumors or misinformation. So just make sure that you avoid that as well. If you haven't gone through spokesperson training, you should definitely consider it. We will do that with a lot of our clients. Some of them have already gone through spokesperson training in the past, but it can really help to provide just experience and general preparation for any type of interview you might get, helps strengthen your existing interview skills, and can empower you to fully leverage the opportunities when you get them. And there are specific kind of tools and ways to navigate the conversations that media professionals can help you not only understand what they are, but then can help work with you on how to use them. And then once your interview is wrapped up, there's still a little bit of homework to do. You always want to thank the reporter for their time. Again, they're super busy and slammed. I always share this anecdote. When I first started working with John Matarese of Don't Waste Your Money at WCPO, he came with a full camera crew and had a bunch of people working with him. The last time that I worked with him, it was him and his phone. So they are wearing a lot of hats. They are not just reporters. They are also videographers, editors. They're writing copy and they're sharing it to their social media channels. So just thank them for their time. They have quite busy schedules. Again, make sure you contact your team to debrief, talk about what well, what didn't, maybe if you have to anticipate maybe some damage control, or you shared information that maybe wasn't public. Like that's all stuff that you're going to want to regroup on and figure out a strategy for kind of combating that and preparing for that. And if they use the information. And then, of course, if the reporter asked for any follow-up items, or if you offered any follow-up items, make sure you get that over to them right away once it wraps, because they're usually, again, on tight deadlines. And then always ask when they expect the story to run or air so that you know when to look for it. And hopefully we'll find that link pretty quickly. And then finally, once it comes out, review the article or story. Make sure that if there's any misinformation that you get that corrected. I have to be very clear though, you cannot ask to change the story because you don't like the story. You can ask them to change names, spellings, dates, etc., like factual information that's incorrect. So just be mindful of that when you do ask for corrections. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Gosh, that's such great information. So comprehensive. I feel like you really thought it through from the very moment that you're thinking about getting an interview all the way till the end. So thank you very much. And I do want to open it up for Q&A. I do want to share though, real quick, something that we have coming up, which is relevant. So I'm not even going to bother to share to do this in presentation mode. So I'll just wait till you can see it. So just a little bit about Aviatra, because I didn't really say anything in the beginning, in case people don't know. So we help women start and grow their businesses. So we have educational programs, we have coaching, we have free programs like this one, and we also have a membership community. And what we have coming up that is very relevant, that might be of interest to everybody here. So we have a masterclass. So this is a new program that we're starting this year. And these are 1-day in-person classes in the Cincinnati area. They're actually in Covington. And then one we have coming up is called Increase Your Visibility Through Impactful Public Speaking. So it's about finding your authentic voice, whether you're going to be on stage, behind the camera, behind the microphone, however you're going to be sharing your story and the story of your business. I think it's going to be incredibly helpful and potentially transformational to get yourself comfortable talking about your business. So there's the QR code there, and then we're going to put the link to the class in the chat. And I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go to Q&A with Lauren. Does anybody have a question? I actually have one. So I actually have a couple. But so you know how you said the difference between advertising and media is one is earned and one is you have to pay for. So, but I noticed sometimes on the news that there are some segments that I feel like they look like they were sponsored, although they don't transparently say that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's getting a little rough out there. I'm not gonna lie. I will say, just to paint the landscape of what media looks like right now, it's very different than when I started in this career. The newsrooms are about a third, sometimes even smaller than that of what they used to be. So advertising dollars help those media outlets run. And there are oftentimes segments that appear to be organic, but one way to really know whether or not they're paid is if it's almost like an infomercial and you're like, wow, this is a lot of airtime for one product or service, they've usually paid for that. Pricing on those are several thousands of dollars in order to secure those. Some starting anywhere from like $2,000 up to $6,000 for a segment. And that's again, like 3 to 4 minutes of coverage for those opportunities. So, definitely if somebody reaches out to you, one of the other questions that you're going to want to ask is this a paid opportunity or is this earned media? Just to make sure that you're not getting yourself into something where they're like, great, here's a contract. And you're like, oh, that's not what I thought this was. Yeah. Our clients, again, pay us to vet those when they come in, where they're like, hey, we got this question from Fox 19 and I see it's not one of my contacts. I'm like, it's an ad person. So I'll check in and just ask them politely what the deal is. And I'll say, I think they're not interested at this time, but I'll float the information by them. You definitely will want to ask if it's paid or earned, just to clarify that it's a free opportunity versus a paid opportunity.
What have you seen as far as the results from that type of a thing? I mean, it's probably, even at a couple $1,000s, it's probably cheaper than an ad campaign on TV. So do you think it's effective?
Is tricky because we haven't done a lot of those with clients. In terms of the metrics that they have available, there are very few. And just to be very transparent, and we are with our clients as well, media relations is very hard to analyze and quantify. We know that it works. We've had multiple clients say, oh, we got like 3 phone calls for new memberships today because of the pickleball segment you secured. Or we can see on Google Analytics when a story runs, the huge jump in organic traffic because they're searching for the development. So there are ways to do that, but it's difficult. And so on the paid side, they're running into the same challenges that we are. They can give you the numbers of people that they think are watching at that time. They can certainly give you data and analytics around link clicks when those go up on their website. But really, other than that, it is hard to quantify kind of your return on investment there. And they'll come prepared with a media kit, and they'll tell you all these numbers that they are sure of. Sometimes they're truthful, sometimes they're a little padded, but so just be very wary of those when you get them, and make sure you're asking really smart questions, like, what exactly am I getting with this investment? Do I get social media posts included in this? Am I going to be included in email newsletters, and can I see the results of that? Is this going up on your website after it runs on air, right? Just ask a lot of those questions to make sure you're maximizing that if you do want to pay for those opportunities.
Those are great. Thank you very much. Anybody else, please feel free to come on camera and ask your question. But I do have 2 more questions. So
Jennifer, I
somebody
see
else
you.
can jump in.
I see Jennifer's got a question.
Okay, perfect. Jennifer.
Thanks. Well, this is fantastic. Back in a very previous business many years ago, I had some good media coverage. I was a sexual harassment trainer.
Mhm.
And boy, you never know what they're going to actually say. I mean, when the final piece comes out.
Mhm.
But I survived all that. Now I'm a death doula.
Mm.
And so my topic is actually a bit sexy right now.
Yeah.
And I know like WVXU, well, I think all the media outlets would be a good potential. I don't feel quite ready because I'm kind of getting my business and website into a 2.0 version. So there's some invention and reinvention going on. But a quick question about WVXU,
Mhm.
assuming you work with them.
We do. Yep. Yeah.
And I'm curious what is it worthwhile to to pay for sponsored ads? Because nobody knows what a death doula is. That is my biggest issue right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
And so it's education. But if I were to take the approach of doing trying to be a sponsor, or I don't even know how that looks with VXU or what the financial commitment is there versus trying to get interviews, or are both of those things a solid strategy?
So what I'm hearing from you is one of the challenges that you're facing is awareness and education around what you do. That's not going to be achieved with an ad campaign. What an ad campaign will typically look like for them is they'll say, so and so is sponsoring the segment. And then they'll give maybe like a 1-line sentence about what it is. And you'd have to figure that out. How do I turn what I do into one sentence? It's going to be really tough. Or if they run digital ads, like it'll have a link to your website. Again, what we find in the marketing side of what we do in comms is that there's always a big chunk of people who will click on the link, and then a lot of those people will immediately go away because they either didn't mean to click on it, or they're like, I don't want to sift through this information. So I think for you, earned media is actually going to be the best route because you'll be able to tell your story. You'll be able to educate a little bit better. And I would encourage you to think about either current events that are taking place, or not holidays, because there is no holiday for death. But if you can find some sort of news angle, so I'll give you an example of one that we've done for professional service in the past. We worked with an organization very similar to your sponsor, who offers kind of HR and additional support to organizations. And part of that was legal advice, right, around employment laws. So in Kentucky, there was a law that passed that changed some regulations and rules for businesses around pregnant workers. So what we did is once that law passed, I was out pitching this person who could speak to those changes and what businesses needed to be prepared for. So if I were you, I would think about anything that's going on in the news. If there's a tragic accident that happens, like you can talk about how you can help people through grief through your services and what you do. I think too, if you think about the folks that you'd want to pitch, it's like health and wellness reporters like a Liz Bonus. It's going to be some of those folks who cover those topics at the Inquirer, who do like more in-depth reporting around that. Really, I think you're going to need to look for some news hooks and some current events that would cause, I think all of us have been bombarded by the wars that are going on, in other countries and how that might be impacting people here. You could definitely use that as a news hook. Like there are people here locally that are mourning the loss of family members in these areas that are experiencing, horrific crimes that are taking place, and significant amount of loss. Here's a service that will help people kind of move through that grief. So that's how I would position it. And again, I do think that paid ads really aren't the role for you. It's not going to give you the opportunity to really express and educate people on like what it is that you do.
Right. Thank you so much. I
No
appreciate
problem.
Great advice, Lauren. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Anybody else feel free to come on camera, but or just on mic, or put your question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and ask my other question until somebody else chimes in. So, you're talking about radio interviews and that sort of thing. What about podcasts, and how do you find a podcast that, like, is there I don't know. I just don't know how to do that. Like how to find I would love it if there were a local podcast, and I've Googled Cincinnati podcasts, and I get tons and tons of podcasts that talk about Cincinnati sports teams, but that's not relevant. That's not what I want. So
Yeah.
I don't know how else to find that. What are your thoughts around that?
So podcasts are a little bit different. So it's hard because we use tools like Cision, and there are like specific databases for podcasts. There is a price involved with those. As an agency, we pay for that as a service that we then provide to our clients. But there are databases where you can literally go in and search, like, I want podcasts that are in the US that cover the topics of grieving, right? And if that's the case, then it'll pop up and it'll show you all those options. Unfortunately, without kind of those tools are very pricey, just to be transparent. Otherwise, it's kind of manual research. So you'll want to go in, if you listen to a podcast, right? And you're like, I really want to get on this podcast, go to their website, do some research, see if there's usually like a contact us section on any outlet. So this is actually a good thing to bring up. On the Inquirer's website, on the Courier's website, you can actually go to look up their staff, and they will have their contact information and their beat that they cover. So you can click on them. You can see the type of coverage that they've had in the past. It will have their email address available. It'll also tell you like what their X handle is. It's Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now. Who knows these days? But that can also be a good a resource for you. And again, most media outlets will have those sections. Now, magazines do not. Those are really hard to get into, but like a podcast, a lot of them will have a contact us that you'll be able to find on their website, which will help you narrow down who to go to, or at least to start the conversation.
That's good. That it's harder, I think, when you wanted to find a local podcast, but for people who are like restricted to a region, that's great.
Yeah. And there are a couple. So Kenton Hornbeck, who's with Link NKY, if you provide services or products in Northern Kentucky, they do have one. Him and Lacey, the managing editor over there, she's running operations at this point. They do have like a business one. So if you're located in Northern Kentucky or you do business over there, that could be a good option for you. The Courier's is currently on hiatus, so it's a little bit different. Andy Brownfield was doing that, and then he got a new job. So I think he's been a little under weather, or just had a lot on his plate lately. So they do plan to kind of restart that, but that's another one. And then business wise, in my mind, it's a podcast, but it's technically radio. It's a weird mix of the two. So those are another option for you in terms of local ones. But again, if you have any that you listen to that you're like, oh, I'd really love to be on this, just look at those contact us pages, and they'll usually have some, like if it's media inquiries or like where to submit your news, they'll have something like that.
Thank you. That Ed McMaster's popped into the chat and said, what was the name of the blog directory you mentioned, and the one that listed the blogs to search?
So Cision will also have access to that. So Cision, Muckrake, those are both two tools that you can leverage. They will search everything from like traditional news outlets to podcasts to blogs. So it really will give you kind of the full gamut. With Cision, you can actually like pick, I'm looking for blogs in this region that cover bourbon. And that'll actually kind of hone it in and help you find those contacts and the blogs. Sometimes they have contacts for them, sometimes they don't, so you have to do some manual digging. They're not always the easiest to find, so just be patient and get your reporter hat on and do some digging. That I would encourage.
Love it. Thank you.
Hi, Lauren, this is April. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, my question is about if you're launching something, right? Something new, like you're launching a major event that the city has never seen, or you're launching a nonprofit. I actually was just looking up the official month for the theme of my nonprofit that I'm going to be
Very
launching in
smart. That's your news
2024.
hub.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, when do you start the push for that? Right? Like, is that
Yeah.
90 days out, 60 days out? Like what does that look like in timeline?
That's a great question. So if it's an event, I would put together a calendar release at least 90 days out. You would want to send that to like Cincy Mag, NKY Mag, Cincinnati Family, Cincinnati Magazine if you want to get it in their print editions. And that's just like general information of like the who, what, where, when, why. Here's a link to tickets. Then there's also a press release, right? When you're making the announcement of the news, like this is a new product or service, a press release will allow you to explain a little bit more like what you're doing, why you're doing it. It'll give you some areas to include quotes, and really tell your story about like what it is you're launching. And I would put that together at least a month out, and I would send it out 3 weeks before your big announcement and start to get it to the news desk. And it sounds to me like some of the outlets that you're looking for is like a City Beat, a Cincinnati Magazine. You're looking for Luann Gibbs at the Inquirer, who does the things to do in Cincinnati roundups. Those are the folks I think you're going to want to target. And then of course, like Link, if it's over here in Northern Kentucky, they have an events section in their print and their digital. So the calendar alerts have to go out really, really far in advance if you're trying to get in those long form publications like the magazines, because they work 2 to 3 months out.
Sure.
But for most other outlets, we usually start pitching at least 3 weeks out. If we want to do more like in studio segments and stuff, we try to get those out sooner, but 3 weeks is a good rule of thumb.
Okay. Got it. And then for the nonprofit launch, like I would be like the month that everybody will be talking about my topic will be November. Okay. So I'm kind of like, when should I start talking about this?
Yeah. And
If
this
the
is an
month
odd
everybody's
year.
going to be talking about the topic is going to be November.
And this is an odd year for that because it's an election year. So I'll be really frank.
Good point.
I know. I'll be really frank with you. Anything that is going on in November is going to be tough. The newsrooms are like all hands on deck coverage for elections in November, and it starts in October. So if you're trying to get some awareness and some traction before that, I would start pitching early September. You want to get in front of them as early as possible. Now, I will say, like leading up to October, November, the folks who are going to be really focused on the political aspect side of things, they're the political reporters. But then once you get into like October, November, when the elections start, it is an all hands on deck situation. And it is just, it's tough for people in my industry, for our clients. They just are full on politics at that point.
No, that I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is a very good point. For this year in particular,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it might make more sense to maybe even put some energy and PR around it, way earlier, potentially.
Yeah.
Right. And then
I would.
Yeah. Okay. That's good insight. Thank
I would
you.
also say, April, that there's lots of podcasts and stuff like that just don't address politics at all. So there might be opportunities to still get the word out, just not in mainstream media, as Lauren said, we'll be doing, talking about election stuff all the time.
Yeah, and I think I'll just have to pay attention to what the national organizations that will be discussing what I will be talking about, like what is their strategy too?
Yeah.
How do they let their voice be heard in that same month, given it is an election month? So I'll just have to kind of be paying attention to that stuff too. So
Yeah.
thank you for all y'all's insight. I
No
appreciate
worries.
you.
And it's not impossible to get coverage during election year. You just have to pitch much further out because you'll have to follow up a few more times than you normally would.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I wanted to put another link into the chat. So one of the things that we do at Aviatra is we do one-on-one coaching for women-owned businesses. So if you're interested in that, it's free. And I just put the link in there. If you want to sign up for that, we can talk through some of your ideas and like what you're doing with your business. What are the resources you need? Connect you to experts like Lauren. So happy to have conversations with you and talk through some of this stuff. That'd be really fun. Jennifer and I did that earlier this, or was it the end of last year? It was really great session. So yeah.
I did want to hop on here. It looks like Margarita had just really wanted to sing your praises, Lauren. She just wanted to thank you. She really this is really applicable to her right now as she's applying for some BBC radio production positions. So she's like, and she's going to be doing some pre-recorded video and some interviews soon. So she was really, really glad, and this is just right up her alley right now. And she just wanted to say thank you so much.
Perfect. Well, good luck with that.
I know, that's really exciting. All right, everybody. Well, oh, Amy, go ahead, take it away.
I just wanted to comment, Lauren. I feel so. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I think I've mentioned to some people in this group before, but I was with the Cincinnati Reds for 14 years, and doing my own thing now. And I feel like I was even able to get some takeaways from this in regard to kind of self-promotion when you were talking a lot on the building a media kit. I'm not at the level where I'm doing TV and radio interviews, but I was still able to get some takeaways here. So it was great. So.
That's great. Yeah, and Amy too, with professional services, one of the things that I think people overlook, and it's more of a communications tactic than PR necessarily, although it falls under our purview sometimes with clients. Find good professional networking opportunities and events like chamber events, because that's really when you're going to be able to like have conversations with business owners who might be leveraging your services. That is also, a way to present you and your brand just in person. But making sure that you're leveraging all the opportunities through your chamber. They have a podcast, they have a magazine that they do, they have newsletters that go out. So there's a lot of resources there too. If, media, you're not quite ready for it, get involved with your chambers or your local organizations. They have plenty of avenues for communications as well. That would be really beneficial.
That's great. Yeah, just kind of being a part of those conversations with the individuals who are there starting their own businesses, like how I can help from that end, branding and event promotion. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna, I don't want to super plug this program that we have coming up, but I'm telling you what, it is really amazing. If you're interested in teaching or public speaking about your topic, it is going to be, I think, a great next step for you to feel really confident. And then at that point you go to Lauren and you say, okay, I'm ready. Like, get me some PR, get me on some stages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Well, hey, thank you all so much. We're going to send out the replay to you, and hopefully you found this really helpful. And thank you again so much to Jack from Pay Forwards and to Lauren from Scooter Media.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.